Hi, hello, vanakkam, and welcome back to yet another episode on Little Slaw YouTube channel. So today in this video, we will see about how to use the real browser recording to record a script. So basically, we have web, we have SAP GUI, we have Citrix, and real browser testing. So in this very first example, we will see how to record a script. So here I have enabled the real browser recording, and under general we can see two options. So one is the CSS and the next option is the XPath, and then we have various other options of the resolution. So in case if I want to record it in a small resolution, I can do it, or in case if I want to maximize, I can maximize the resolution. So for now I'll choose 1920 cross 180 1080, and then the local. So here this will give you an option to record based on the language. So for now I'm just choosing the default, and time zone I'm not making any changes, I'm just leaving it as default. And for now let me start the script with the CSS as the recorder selector type. So for now, so I'm just changing the name so that you can identify what recording is that. So I'm just going to name it as CSS and real browser recording. Then I'm clicking on OK. So now we have got the recording window, and here we have got the browser. So for now I'm starting the transaction as 01 and the home page, sorry, the landing page, and then I'm navigating to the second transaction, which is entering the store, and then the third transaction, which is sign in, and then the fourth transaction, which is entering the username and the password, and click to enter, and then the transaction 5, where I'm going to open the fish product, and then the sixth transaction where I have chosen a product ID, and then the seventh transaction where I'm adding it to a cart, eighth I'm adding to proceed to checkout, and then the ninth transaction is click continue, and then the 10th transaction, which is confirm. So the reason why I'm taking you through all these transactions is I want to show you how does this real browser transaction, especially the CSS, works with different elements. Say for example, it can be a different, it can for a get request or for a post request. So when we enter the username password, so it all differs when it comes to uh, the CSS, that is especially with the real browser recording, because all these are different elements. Because in some options we do click the URL or the href, and some options we are entering some value. So based on that there will be different changes. So we have completed the first script. So let me sign out of this transaction, and I have signed out and I have completed my first transaction, and that is with the CSS real browser recording. So that now Neoload has detected the known technology. So in this step we propose to make you design stronger. So it confirms that the technology we have used is the real browser. So I'm clicking on next. So as usual I'm overwriting the think time to 0. I'm clicking again on next, and then I'm clicking on finish. So let's now go to the script. So here under the script we can see, so there are two options. One is the try catch. So try is where the positive for the scenarios that we have recorded will be stored, and cache is something where if there are any errors, in case if we want to catch any errors, we can write the conditions under the cache transactions. For now everything that we recorded is under the try. So here you can see we have opened the browser, and then we have captured the request. So under transaction 1 I have navigated to the petstoreoctopuff.com website, and after that any of these actions were not the network transactions. So they basically are the actions that we do. Because for example, if the same transaction, so let me show you the same transaction in the web browser, because that will help you to understand the difference. So let me just disable this, and I'm starting my client with the edge, and I'm just removing this transaction, and this is going to be a web recording. So this will clearly show you what is the difference between the web recording and the real browser recording. So I'm again going back to this transaction and I have opened the browser here. I'm naming the transaction 01 and pet store. 02 is entering the store. 03, sorry, 03 is sign in. 04, I'm entering the credentials. 05, I'm opening the fish. 06, which is I'm selecting the product ID, and 07, where I'm selecting the adding the item to the cart. 8 is proceed to checkout. 9 is continue. 10 confirm, and the 11th, which is the last step, will sign out. So in this way I have recorded the web transaction. So let me just sign out of the transaction. So in the previous real browser recording, we saw that these particular recording did not happen. I mean, all these values were not recorded. It just showed us that this is a real browser recording and there were like no correlations, nothing like that. So let me click on next, and then again another next and another next. So this will check for any framework, it will check for any other IDs that has been recorded since we have. So all these actions are real browser, and that was the difference between the real browser. And so here you can see it is asking the web browsing recording is asking me for what are all the values that has been changed, or how, or is there anything that has to be parameterized, or is there any value that can be correlated. So see here it has asked me for the correlation value. So this is the basic difference between the web recording and the CSS, the real browser recording. So here you can see, so under this real browser recording of the CSS, for the first transaction it showed that I have navigated to the pet store, and the same thing here. So it is not showing it because the way it recorded is completely different. So here the second transaction is enter store, and the same here. So the page, everything is same, but the recording is different. So here the page that is recorded is completely different, the URL, and here you don't find the URL, but instead I get to see the parameters. That is the difference between the real browser and the web testing. So in fact here you can see all these recordings has selected based on the CSS, that is a CSS selector, that's just a cascading style sheet selector. So every recording has been selected. So for example, in this particular page, so here I have entered the store. So for that it showed me like I have clicked on the link which is enter the store. So here there is this option where I have clicked on enter the store in case. So this is actually the assertion, or this is where the values that I have entered. So in case if I make any change to it, it will definitely fail. And then coming back to the next place, so here I have the username where I have entered the values. So I have entered the username, and here you can see I have entered the value 1 as the username, and then the same way I have, so here it's almost encrypted. So but in case if I want to parameterize it, I can very well do it. So for now what I will do is, let me validate the script, and I will show you what happens when I do the checking. So there is again a lot of difference between validating the real browser recording and the normal web page testing. So when I start with the real browser recording, so here you can see what actions I have did. So every action will be done by the real browser, that is using the Neoload. So that is how the real browser, because you are recording it through a real browser and it's not through a web browser, because in web browser we all know every action is recorded or is tracked as a network, but in real browser it is tracked as the actions. So for now we have tested the CSS, we have recorded and tested the CSS. So what I will do now is, let me show you how does the other option, that is the third option of, so sorry, the second option, which is the XPath. So I'm just choosing the XPath real browser testing and I'm clicking on OK. So now we will record this application with XPath. So I'm clicking on XPath underscore real browser underscore recording. So by using this, I'm going to record the application, the very same application with the real browser. So let's start with 01, the landing page, and then 02, which is entering the store, 03, which is sign in, 04, where I'm entering the username and the password. Clicking on login. Now it is the fifth step. I'm choosing the same item, so it will be easy for us to do a comparison. Just choosing the sixth one, which is I'm clicking on the product ID, and then seventh one, which is adding to the cart. Transaction number 8 is proceed to checkout. Transaction number 9 is I'm continuing it. 10, I'm confirming the transaction, and 11, I sign out of this transaction. With that, I complete my recording. So now again the same way. So for real browser, it just asks you whether what kind of technology is that. So we are just choosing it as real browser and click on next. So the same thing is here. So I'm overwriting the think time to 0 and clicking on next and choosing finish. So now the same way, so this is similar to what we have for the CSS. So the same way, so any transaction that is will be that is recorded will come under the try folder. But what's the difference between the CSS and the XPath? So here for the very first transaction, that is the click on the enter the store. So here if I go to the transaction, which is click on enter the store, so here you can see the selector for XPath shows you the XPath selector here, that is the XPath slash a text is equal to enter the store. But when it comes to the CSS, so the so this is the difference. So let me bring you a notepad and I can show you what is the exact difference here. So let me, yeah, so I'm opening a notepad now here, and so let me bring down the differences for you. So here this is the CSS recording and this is the selector, and at the same time for the XPath, this here is the difference. So for the CSS, it records every action in the same way like how we see it in the CSS selector, but when it comes to XPath, it changes its way of recording. So every step that we record will be changed to XPath selector. So this, in fact, if you are using a Selenium tool, this will be very helpful for you because you don't need to worry about searching for a text, for a box, for anything that you want to automate. So this will be very helpful in case if you are using or if you are part of your Selenium scripting. This will be very helpful. This will in fact save you lots and lots of time for navigating through the items. So for now, so this is the basic difference. So same thing for all the transactions. So here you can see for sign in, again every transactions will be selected as the XPath rather than the CSS. So that is the difference between the XPath and the CSS recording. So what I will do now is let me validate it for you. So I've started the checking, and this is again same for the CSS. So this will start the browser. So here it's waiting for the browser to open. So once it hits the open the browser, and automatically we can see it is started to record, or it start to reproduce, and it start to test the application. And yeah, we have completed the testing. So what in case if I want to create an assertion? So here you can see the response here is just element clicked. So there are no other response or assertion. So the only assertion you can check is here, the response code. So that's what we have got here. So in this scenario, when you want to add an assertion, it can be something like, see, if let me go to the validation here, and if I'm going to this second transaction, which is entering the store. So here you can see, so this is the response. So for now, what I'm going to do now is I'm going to choose. So I've chosen this response here, and coming back to the store, I'm clicking on the validation. I'm adding the assertion here, and I'm entering the element clicked, and I'm clicking on OK. Let me save it, and I'm just going to, so I've started validating the script now. So here, let me start the checking. Let's wait for it to complete, and meanwhile I'll show you what are we observing in the assertion here. So the browser is going to open, and here it has got opened, and it's checking for the transactions. So it's trying to enter the values, or it's trying to reproduce the scenario which we have recorded. And then, so here, when we come to the second transaction, so here you can see the one assertion has been succeeded, which is the response. So the element clicked. So what if, so let me again go back here, and I'm just changing the value to enter the STOR, just STO. I'm just changing the value to enter the STO. And I'm going to save it, and I'm running the checking again, and let's see what really happens here. So the real browser recording has started, the validation has started, and now the browser will be opening, and here you can see automatically the steps have been moved. So in fact we have deleted the value, enter the STO, the element has clicked. So let's go back to the CSS path here. So the text is enter the store, and here the link name is enter the store. So let me change it here. So let me change it to a different value. So for now I'm going to choose here as Little's Law. And the same way I'm going to change the value here to Hello Little's Law. So what I did here is I've changed the selector here. So instead of the value enter the store, it will look for the Little's Law. So let me save it, and let's do a checking again. So in fact, let me stop this checking, and what I will do here is let me completely stop this checking, and I will add the think time. So consider as think time. So let me change this to 5 seconds, and let me start it again. And the validation has started, and let's wait for the browser to get opened. So the browser has opened, and here you can see it's waiting for 5 seconds, and it has again clicked the value, and then it's entering the value 1, and again another 1. So everything is going smooth even though we have changed the value. But let's select this transaction, so even the response also has worked. So let's see what has happened here. So the only thing that we have not changed here is the child. So I'm going to change the child to 3 for now, and let's save this transaction, and let's do another checking. So this is to check which exact value has been the source of recording, our source of navigation. So I have chosen, so initially we changed the link which we have used, and let me again bring it for you here. So now it's waiting for 5 seconds, and let's wait and see what link does it click, and we can see how does it really works. So here you can see it's waiting for more amount of time. Yeah, so here we have got the error because the reason here is we have changed. See, you can see the error here. So the very first thing is it did not match any elements. It did not match any elements, and it did not completely match any element. So since we have changed the value, so in case if your script and everything is working fine, there won't be any changes to the flow. But in case if you are making any changes, so here we have made changes to the nth child, so which is the source of clicking the enter the store. So even though I have changed the value, so it is not looking for the values, but instead it is looking for the final selector, that is the nth child. So let's stop checking, and same way let's find what are all the other values we have similar to this. So here again you have the menu content. So anything that comes under the nth child is the source of your transaction. So here you can see nth child as 1, and these transactions has to be followed, and there should not be any change to it. So what are the other things that you can do when coming to this script? So let's again revert this back to the normal working one. I'm going to change, I've changed it to 1, and let me consider this as think time, and let me just validate this so that we can move to the next step. So the only way to add assertions is you can add whatever responses you have for the particular transaction. So in this transaction, for example, you have the validation as element click, so that can be your assertion, because that is what is happening, because you are not recording any of the network or any of the values from the application, but instead you are recording only the actions that you do for the application. So in case if you want to add any assertions, all your assertions can be this one. So for example, for the very first script, it can be your, so here you can see, so in this one, this is the web page, so you can take any of the values from here. But starting from the second transaction, for the response should be element clicked. For the third transactions, again it has to be element clicked on. So same way, this is the same action. So here you can see the text is typed, and here it can be key press. So these are the different set of transactions that has been recorded during this application. So this is the basic difference between the web application and the CSS, the real browser testing. So let's move on to the same thing. So here again, in case if you want to make any changes here, so you have to make changes to the values here. So here this is the value that is, it looks for the uh, clicking on the application. So, and in case if you want to make any uh, parameterization, you can really do that. So let's go to the next step where we will plan for a load test. So I'm just choosing it. So I'm going to just choose only the CSS and the XPath, and I'm removing the web browsing testing. So let's change it to 50 and 50 percentage, sorry, 50%. And then coming back to the runtime, so we have the populations here, and let's run this test for 2 minutes. So I'm just having the constant transaction, and let's start the application. So the real browser, and let me just check how much user test do I have or I can run with this license. So let me go back, and I will just try with one user so that I can just check whether I have at least for one user or for two, a minimum of two. So even I don't have access for two users, so let me just try with one. Yeah, so even I don't have access to, but in case if you really want to test it, so you can really run the test with the number of users, any number of users test, and just let me know how does the test went. So this is how the real browser recording works, and you have two options. One is the CSS and the other one is the XPath. So I wish you all the very best to try recording your test with the real browser recording. Do a test, check the values. In case if you want to add any assertions, please feel free to add any assertions. Take the values from the execution and add them as the assertions. Do a validation. Please don't forget to do a validation. So these are the values you can do add as an assertion. Please do add these values as assertions and then do a validation. And once everything is fine, please do a load test with this setup and just let me know how does the test went. So until I meet you in another interesting video, it's bye bye from Vasan Shanmugam and Little Slaw.